Barter and IOUs were the earliest form of human trade. But as peoples grew more interconnected, these had to be replaced as they simply didn't scale up. We are now at the earliest forms of money, represented by gold and silver coins. This, however, is not the end of the story. Gold and silver are limited materials, and most countries have no major natural sources of them. This allowed countries that do have access to productive mines, such as Spain through its colonies in South America, to grow rich and powerful. It also made these countries a target, for example by British pirates. As the trade between countries expanded, more money needed to be minted. Wars and conquest were extremely expensive, and people began to hoard ever-increasing amounts of wealth, meaning that larger and larger quantities of gold and silver had to be stored and moved around. Enter the goldsmiths, who already carried stocks of gold and had secure premises where it could be kept safe. The wealthy began to leave their stocks of gold with goldsmiths and, for a fee of course, it would be kept safe until it was ready to be spent. Gold is extremely heavy. $1 billion worth of gold weighs 26 tons, the same as 4 T-Rexes or 262 Jeff Goldblums. Carrying large sums of it around with you was not feasible. So, a more convenient way to pass ownership of gold between people was made. Goldsmiths began issuing promissory notes, bits of paper that could be exchanged for gold at a later date. At the same time, coins began to be cast from cheaper, lighter metals that similarly held the promise that they could be exchanged for gold. Soon, these promises became as useful as gold. They were all that were needed to trade, and it became increasingly rare for anyone to actually show up and ask for their 20 quid bill to be turned into gold. Then, in the coffee houses of London, the goldsmiths come bankers hit on an idea. What if they printed more promissory notes than they could actually back up with real gold? Since the people trusted the banks to always have gold to exchange, they could lend this new money out at an interest, and as long as most people didn't request their money, there would never be any shortfall. Of course, if everyone did want their money at the same time, then this would be a big problem for the bank, and a bigger one for the people who lost their money. This was called a run on the bank. So the promissory note had become money in a form close to as we know it today. With that, promising and moving money with schemes like loans, insurance, shares and currency exchanges became a business in its own right, one that soon overtook the value of the supposedly real business of manufacturing goods and providing services that the concept of money was originally intended to enable. Gold soon became irrelevant to the whole system, and through the 20th century countries abandoned the idea that money could be exchanged for gold or that the value of money should be tied to it. All money became what is known as fiat money. The money itself has no intrinsic value. The paper or metal it is printed on is effectively worthless, and increasingly money only exists as numbers on a computer. The only thing it can be exchanged for is what someone else will give you for it. Money has value only because everyone agrees it has value. Next time we'll look at how this vast, interconnected, international system of money operates, and occasionally fails to operate. Can the current system be expected to continue, or are we heading for another upheaval in how we do business?